What does it look like when two leaders, each defined by experience, innovation, and performance, unite to elevate Canadian real estate lending? With nearly a decade of serving the needs of investors, borrowers, and mortgage brokers in the alternative market, Neighbourhood Holdings has now taken a major step forward by acquiring Fisgard Asset Management, forming one of the largest alternative mortgage lenders in Canada. Together, they manage nearly $800 million in mortgages across more than 2,000 borrowers and over 3,000 investors nationwide. Through the Neighbourhood banner, the team works directly with mortgage brokers across Canada, providing short-term mortgages for quality borrowers who may not fit traditional bank criteria. Every loan is backed by real assets, ensuring a measured, conservative approach, seeking to provide investors with stable income while preserving invested capital. Whether you're a mortgage broker seeking flexible financing options or an advisor looking for regular income solutions, Neighbourhood's expanded reach brings track record, transparency, and opportunity, now even stronger with Fisgard's 30-year legacy. To learn more about the Neighbourhood, visit neighborhood.com to view the offering memorandum or speak to your financial advisor today. This is not advice, and consult a professional advisor before investing a loonie in any of these investments. Before we get started, I just want to remind everyone that this information discussed today is not intended to be or construed as investment advice. Please consult a professional advisor before putting a loonie in any of these financial markets.
The dirty secret is that no one's ever going to get paid back.
People have the shortest memories when it comes to investment.
We just got to get Keith into Bitcoin.
Hey, there's a bubble.
Welcome back to the Loonie Hour, episode 223. As always, joined by the three amigos. We got the Boomer over in Halifax, Rich Diaz in Montreal. Welcome back to the show, Richard.
Gentlemen, how are you doing? It's snowing a lot in Montreal, and I watched a cool show. If you're into finance, if you like the movie Big Short or Margin Call, there's like a cool show on HBO called Industry. So if you want to get
brand new.
No, I think the first season was 2019, but it's like an insight into like a trading desk. It's a bit apocryphal, but it's fun. And
how does it end, Rich? How does it end?
Well, like all hedge funds, it always ends with misallocation of capital. But no, I don't know how it ends. I've only watched season 1, but it's cool. If you want to get a little, it's obviously romanticized, but it's an insight on how it is to be on a trading desk in London. So there you go.
Tell us about the Habs.
No, we're not allowed anymore.
I love reading the comments and feedback we get, and there's been a few suggestions to have a little bit less hockey conversation, which I agree with.
So we're going to talk about the Buffalo Bills this week instead.
Football is wide open. That's drama. That's drama for week.
49ers, baby.
Yeah, Steve's getting more into the football storyline. But anyway, guys, what are we looking at for the week, Steve? We're now kicking off the year. January, nothing is happening around the world. That's it.
Yeah, it's been eventful to say the least. Obviously, we'll kind of get through it, but some sort of high level stuff. This past week, you had Jay Powell out. You had some Chinese trade data. We had German Chancellor coming out and discussing their issues. We had U.S. CPI, PPI, obviously the stuff that's going on in Iran. So there's just a lot geopolitically. We're still working on a couple guests that we're lining up for probably in February, but we do have a different guest this week. We have an interview coming up with Dave Chilton. He's author of The Wealthy Barber, which I'm assuming most of the people that are listening to this pod have probably heard of that book, but it's kind of like a Canadian icon. It's like he's kind of like the Dave Ramsey of Canada, if that's a fair assessment.
I didn't hear. I have no idea who that is. I'm just being honest with you. Who's Dave Ramsey?
Dave Ramsey's like the American host, like radio show guy, where he basically tells everybody don't go into debt.
Oh, does he have glasses?
Yeah. He's like the personal finance guru for like Americans.
Cool.
Basically. I mean, I'm pretty sure he's a billionaire, but
okay.
Probably not a big deal.
Well, he's not living in California these days.
That's right.
So we had to talk about the California billionaire tax. That's had a big impact.
But Dave's going to be great. I think I'm really excited about this conversation. I did a little bit of Google researching before, so I'm ready to go.
You young guys, so I can't wait for Dave to come on because anyone my vintage and older, we absolutely know David Chilton and who he is and what he's done. I just love hearing how you guys are thinking about him, comparing him to some Yank down there and everything.
So Dave had me on his podcast a couple months ago, and obviously, like, I was familiar with his book. My dad had actually gifted me his book when I was like a teenager, so I was familiar with him from there. I didn't realize honestly how big and how much of an icon he was, just because I go on a lot of podcasts and interviews, and as soon as I went on his, like the DMs were flooded. We're like, oh my God, I can't believe it. You got on his show. Like, he's a legend. So I've obviously gained a lot more respect for him and realizing just really how big that book actually is. And like Keith said, it's almost like, I mean, it's a certain vintage. But Dave, he'll tell you this in the interview, is he wrote this book. Keith, I don't know when he originally wrote the book, but it's got to be at least 20 plus years old now.
No, more. I think it was late 80s.
Okay.
Early,
Before
like
the internet.
89, 90-ish, yeah.
Okay, so he just
Yeah,
came out.
literally before the intro. Like a typewriter. Bang, 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 bang.
He just came out. He sent me his updated version here. So he came out with an updated version basically to sort of modernize the book a little bit, because he's like, listen, like, I talk to Canadians all the time and like things are different, right? Like housing, for example, is most people's largest expense, and that has changed dramatically. The rules of the game, so to speak, have changed. So his updated version of the Wealthy Barber sort of incorporate the modern world, modern finance. And so, yeah, it'll be really interesting to have him on and just sort of chat about his experiences talking to Canadians on a daily basis, personal finance basics and kind of what he sees in the world. He's a super tuned in guy. So
Cool. Exciting.
all right. Well, you guys have nothing else to add, eh?
Well, I want to save all
Very
the stuff for
helpful.
later.
I'm waiting for you to let him
in.
in. He's waiting here to come in.
All
So
right.
let's just,
Without further ado, let's bring in Dave. Welcome to the Loonie Hour.
Thrilled to be here. I watch all of your episodes. I have for years. I do have to take a bit of a shot at you guys. It rattles me when about half the weeks, Steve comes out and says, it's Steve with the other three amigos.
Ah, God, here we go.
Here we go again.
I always think, okay, if he can't get that math right, how much weight should I put on the rest of his opinions throughout the course of the show? And he keeps saying it. Like, he said it several times. So
It's entrenched now.
Yeah, despite that, I've come on the show to meet the four amigos. That was the big thrill.
Well, it
There you
is
go.
Loonie Hour math. We know
It
we
is
have
Loonie
that
Hour math,
going on.
exactly.
So, Dave,
Inflation.
who's your favorite Loonie Hour personality?
Oh, for sure it's you. You asked the question, and therefore it is you. And if somebody else had asked, it would have been them. No, I really like the back and forth between you guys. I think you do a wonderful job. We don't have any other Canadian podcast that really covers off the macro events and talks about the subject matter you guys do. And the three of you have a very good chemistry. So no, I mean it quite sincerely when I say I enjoy the show. And I'm also quite sincere when I say that math mistake off the top really does rattle me. It usually takes me until about minute 12 to go, okay, I'm back into the flow now, and I can take it from there.
You know
Well,
what? A lot
the
of
hockey banter is finished by then, so it's a good time.
Yeah, exactly. Well, when Steve follows it up and says, sales are down in Vancouver by 12%, I'm always thinking, is it 12%? Or has he just screwed up this math and it's something else?
You know what?
Yeah,
I've had a lot of people over the years say, man, where's the third amigo? You guys, and I was like, man, I'm like 4 years in recording. It's too late. But now that you said it, Dave, we might actually change it up.
You're going to fix it. Okay.
Might have finally swayed me.
How did you guys come together, by the way? I mean, how do you know each other from such different parts of the country?
Well, funny story. So Keith and I, we used to do like these interviews for a company called Real Vision, which is like a
I know them well. Yeah.
Yeah,
I was a subscriber forever until they went crypto crazy.
Yeah, I was the same way. Yeah, they used to have like amazing like in-depth conversation. Anyways, so they were like, I interviewed with Real Vision in 2016 because they were doing a documentary about like a housing bubble, and they somehow discovered me, I think, on Twitter. So I was in their documentary. So then I was on their radar, and they're like, hey, we want to do a Canada version series. I think this was like 2017 or 18. Like, can you interview this like guy named Keith Dicker in Halifax? And I was like, sure. So we did one episode together. seemed to go well because they asked us to do another one like a year later. And so Keith and I were like, it seems like people enjoy this. Like, why don't we start up our own podcast? So we kind of agreed to start a pod, me and Keith. And then Keith basically was like, hey, this guy named Richard Diaz just moved from London to Halifax. I think I should connect you guys. You guys might get along. And then Rich goes to me, he goes, I heard that you and Keith are starting a podcast. Can I join?
That's aggressive, eh? That's aggressive.
Keith and I didn't have the heart to tell him no. We really didn't know Rich, to be honest. I mean, Keith and I barely knew each other. But it ended up, Rich, you ended up being the best mistake I've ever made.
Oh my goodness.
Now, do you guys get together a lot personally? And I'll let you take over the podcast after my last question here, but do you guys hang around socially? I mean, I know you're a long way apart, but a couple times a year, do you go on a golf trip or anything like that?
I'll take this one. So it's kind of funny. The very first time we got together, Dave, we did a live event in Vancouver at the boathouse or
rowing club
or something?
Rowing club, Vancouver, yeah.
And it was just it was a shit show really in terms of setting it up. But we had probably 200 people packed in there and it was just so much fun. And then we've done maybe, I'm guessing, at least a dozen different events over the last few years. So whenever we get together for those, we always have fun. And I like to say as well that, myself, Steve, and Rich, we are genuinely like really good friends. And we love hanging out together. So we always take advantage of it. So this is
your last event. You guys, you had Ben out in your last one, did you not? And I wanted to come to that one, but then when I heard Steve wasn't going to be there, I said, I'm not going to that.
Yeah, don't waste your time, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, you've lost the star. So when you're all together again and you're in the general area, I'd like to come out to the live event. That would be a lot of fun.
Well, speaking of which, we're going to have a couple of events in March. So there you go. We weren't going to release that information just yet, but you've twisted our arm, Dave, and we're going to have a couple events in March.
Next time we're in the GTA region, Dave, we'll have you out. We'll take you out for a nice little steak dinner.
Yeah, that would be fun. I'd enjoy that. Good. Okay, well, let's go. Fire away.
Tell us about your updated version, the Wealthy Barber. You wrote this. You were saying, you wrote the original one 37 years ago?
Yeah, I wrote it in 1988. It's unbelievable how old I am. Like, it's shocking. This is not trying to be funny. I've had a few people say to me, like, that you just wrote, I thought you'd be dead by now. Because they read this book almost 4 decades ago. And of course, they assume the author was in his 40s or 50s. And so they think I'd be long gone. I was quite young when I wrote the original version. I came back to write this one because my kids are in the target demographic and they were asking me questions, as were their friends, as were my friends' kids, et cetera. And I could see there's so much information out there. People don't know where to start. They're overwhelmed. Let's go back to the basics. The Wealthy Barber is a good presentation style to cover those off. And I thought it would be a relatively quick rewrite, 6 months. It took me 16 months full-time, 40, 50, 60-hour weeks, longer than the original. Because, of course, now we have TFSAs, FHSAs. The real estate's so expensive in most parts of the country. It makes doing some of the Wealthy Barber teachings much more challenging. Then psychologically, it's more challenging than ever, too, because of social media, the algorithms, all of those aimed at getting at our temptation reflex. So it was a tricky rewrite, but I'm thrilled how well it's going over.
What's the biggest change between sort of the 1987 version and today's version, like in terms of, what would you say is the biggest change?
I'll give you a positive and negative. On the positive front, I mean, accounts like the TFSA and the FHSA, of course, are marvelous, no doubt about it. And you should be taking advantage of them if you can. The FHSA is one of the true no-brainers we've ever had in the country, obviously, with the tax deductibility up front, and then it comes out tax-free when you go to buy the home. It's the best of both worlds with the RSP and TFSA. So there's been some new accounts and new products that I think can help the journey out. The challenge is the cost of living. And it's not just the cost of real estate, by the way. It's the cost of living in general, from food to home insurance to car insurance to cars. Everything has escalated so much in the last X number of years. And let's be honest, prices have gone up at a faster rate than the reported CPI. A lot of people are very, very pinched. And because of that, I'm seeing these spending summaries, these budgets from people, and they're not out buying expensive cars. In some instances, they're handling their money quite well and still having trouble saving the 10 to 15% that you need to set aside to achieve long-term wealth. So it's tricky.
I guess the question is, can the barber still get wealthy today?
It's interesting. I think if you look at income and you look at the different percentiles, I think instead of the bottom 10% being in trouble, building up a financial amount of money they're going to need in retirement. It's the bottom 30 to 35%. And you can see what a huge role parents are playing in helping kids now. In fact, I would argue even the people who recognize it don't fully recognize it. When you talk to real estate agents, they'll say, oh my gosh, it's 75% of the new buyers are getting help from parents and grandparents, not 25, not 50, 75%. I hate to say it, but choose your parents wisely has become probably the most important commandment in finance. It's more important than pay yourself first. So it is tough. You know what I find interesting, if you look at the top 10% in income are always going to do well, obviously. Then the next 25 to 30% usually do quite well too. The next 35 to 40%, you can't summarize them. You can't use averages. They're all over the map. Some bought before 2015 and have done very well with real estate's rise until recently. Some have been a part of the very good stock market performance. Two-income families are fine with no divorce. Some get parental help. But you have others on the exact opposite end. They didn't get involved in the real estate market. They didn't get married or they got divorced. They don't have parent help. So their income is the same, but they're in such a different position than each other. It's almost hard to believe. It's always been a bit that way, but not like now. Now it's crazy. And so that particular group, you can't summarize in any effective way. And of course, the bottom 25 to 30% in income, come on, it's a struggle. You saw the data recently about the number of employed people going to food banks. And it's because they just can't get the money to stretch out to cover everything, including the rent. Like you guys, I think rents are going to come down. I mean, the purpose-built rental percentage going up this remarkably. And then we're also cutting back on immigration. You are going to see rents come down, and that's a good thing for many people.
Dave, you mentioned the sorry, Keith, let me just quickly chime in here. And you mentioned the first-time home buyers getting parental help. I can tell you, like, boots on the ground here in Vancouver, I'd probably say of my clientele over the past decade, I'd probably say 90% of my first-time home buyers have had, usually it's a gift money or a cosign or both.
And you're right. And what's happening is the cosign shows up in formal data, but of course the gift money doesn't. Yeah. And therefore it's getting undercounted. But also, Steve, the amount of money being gifted has changed so much in the last 10 to 15 years. It used to be, we'll help you out with $20,000 and $25,000. So inflation adjusted, maybe 45. Now it's 200,000. It's 180,000 often because
I've seen $1 million checks.
Absolutely. Get to the down payment. And that's an interesting thing about boomers, even smart boomers. They'll say, Dave, yes, real estate's more expensive. It's gone up 2.5 times faster, let's say, than wage years, but interest rates, they're no longer as high as they were, and that softens the pain. It does, but that's irrelevant when you're talking about the down payment. Mm-hmm. So when you're looking at a starter home in Toronto at $750,000, well, 20% is $150,000. Try normal income people saving $150,000 after tax to get a down payment together. That's very difficult, in fact, to do, and that's where parents and grandparents are getting quite involved now, is helping out on those fronts. So it's a challenging situation right now. There's no doubt about it. Lots of people are doing well, but lots of people are scuffling.
I think, so Dave, I remember when your book first came out and I had a copy, man, I went through it so many times, shared it with friends. I actually remember, I think you were touring with one of the big banks at the time. I think you were associated with one of them. The one with the blue shirt, I call them. I used to work for the blue shirts, so I you know what I mean. But I think I met you. You were in here in Halifax as well back in the early 90s in that area, that time. But I think, though, this shares, there's a lot of younger generations today are not happy with the boomer generation. Hey, you guys were set up you had it easier and things like that. And you were exactly explaining that we did have it easier back. So back in those days when your book first came out and, I'm chatting with my friends, you didn't have to save, 100,000 plus to buy a home. You needed 10 grand, basically. That's all you're looking at. And, saving 10% off your paycheck, that was easy. Like you spent that at the pub, and that wasn't hard to do either. So I really empathize with the younger generations today. They're trying to get by. Sure. And we run a wealth management firm, of course, and we see money being gifted and passed along to from what older generation to younger to buy houses. So when the younger generations today, when you're saying, hey, we have it more difficult than older generations, you absolutely do. And that's behind an experience now where rates are going higher all of a sudden. Yeah. So it is difficult. It really is. And I don't know what the solution is. Maybe it is, bringing forward, generational wealth, passing it along. But
Some of it on a
that's
family
similar.
basis it is, but you guys talk a lot about how we need stronger growth and we need it in productivity, because growth without productivity growth just leads to inflation that, overwhelms the system anyway. We need productivity growth. We need more investment. We need policies that lead to both of those things. And hopefully we're moving in that direction. But no, it is very tight. You were mentioning coming out to Halifax. I'll never forget my first speech out there. I couldn't believe how far the airport was from the city.
Yep.
I thought it's so convenient you put it in New Brunswick like that. Very clever. And I came in and
It's
I was
still there.
speech.
It hasn't
It's
moved.
still there.
It's
I know.
Still
And
way the hell out there.
I wasn't well known at all. Like, I was young and starting out, and I got to the old Hilton Hotel in the water. It's changed names, and it said a big sign, Chilton at the Hilton. And nobody knew who I was. Like, I thought this is the dumbest sign ever. And 2,300 people showed up for the speech. That was April of 1990. And that's when I knew the book was about to go. That's the night I always remember thinking it's going to start flying. And it was a book that came out in 89, but didn't take off until year 2. And it did. And since then, I've probably spoken in Halifax 50 to 100 times. I've been out there so regularly for conferences and love it. But going back to your basic point, no, for so many, it's very tight. And look at the ripple impact. We're seeing people have fewer kids. Obviously, that was trending down anyway, but now it's taken a little bit steeper turn down. Like, even my friends' kids are saying, at the most, I'm going to go with 1, 2, no more than that. Divorce rate's actually going down a little bit. And it's because a lot of times people are thinking of getting divorced and they go out and look at the real estate prices and go, you know what, let's work it out. Okay, let's we can fall back in love. There's a way to make this happen. So it is definitely, and I saw, Rich, you nodding your head when I was saying that the CPI understates what's really happened to costs in the last 5, 6, 7 years. I mean, look at this CPI food part where it said it went up 20% and 22%, I think it was, in that 4-year period. You're going, what are they talking about? Like, I don't know how they came up with that figure, even with the substitutions and all the tricks they use. I don't know how they got to that number. And so it is, in fact, difficult. But in some respects, that made it more important than ever to come out with the revised version of the book, because you're saying you can't do as much. Let's make sure you do what you can do as well as is possible. You keep your fees down. You focus long term. Pay yourself first. Sounds corny nowadays. It wasn't when I initially said it, but it's still one of the most important commandments in personal finance. Get the money off the top of the paycheck before you have a chance to spend it, et cetera. So I think those messages are more important than ever, but more difficult to implement.
So, Dave, I have just a question. Number one, I haven't read your book because I don't have a copy, and I would really like one. And I feel
I will
left
get
out.
you one. I will get you one.
Afford one, buddy.
I'm just saying. No, my question is, like, I think, again, having not read your book, so forgive me if I'm out of line here, but I feel like so much of the wealth that has been accumulated by older people is just a function of falling interest rates and a housing bubble. And so how do you talk to those older people and tell them that there needs to be a structural policy shift? Like, do you, I mean, not that you should like pontificate on who people should vote for or how they should feel about this policy or that policy, but fundamentally, I think that's so much of the disconnect. You've got a cohort of very wealthy people who are not interested in growth, productivity, and, natural resources, et cetera, and a bunch of people who are desperate for growth, productivity, et cetera. So how do you?
It's interesting. That's what you hear. I mean, certainly your opinion is the one you see a lot in the media. I'm not sure I agree with it on two fronts. Okay. Number one, when I speak to people 55, 65, 75, they are very concerned with future growth for their kids and grandkids. In fact, the thing they bring up most to me, number one, is their fear of what AI is going to do to the job market. So this myth that the boomers don't care about the generations following them, I don't think is accurate at all. I really don't. In fact, I would argue it's almost a bit the opposite from what I see. But also, here's what's very interesting. When you sit down with a lot of 60, 65-year-olds and 70-year-olds, they don't think of their house as being a big store of wealth. Some will use reverse mortgages. Some will sell and move down. But many of them just want to live in it until their last possible moment. What they have benefited from too, though, is very strong stock markets for the most part. And so they started their dollar cost averaging, their building of RSPs, no TFSAs available then. And those have done very well. Many of those people have averaged 7 to 9% over an extended time frame. They've had great compounding. And so things have worked out well. Your point, Rich, about falling interest rates, obviously helping on all asset return fronts, especially real estate. So they ended up in very good shape. But not a lot of them are thinking I'm wealthy because of my home value, because they're not necessarily going to realize it. They may sell it very late in life or leave it to kids, but they do have good RSPs built up in a lot of instances, not all. Plus, remember, defined benefit pension plans were more present in that age than they are now, except at the government level. So you add it all together, and a lot of them are in good shape. I do, by the way, meet a lot of boomers not in good shape. Not all of them have gotten through this in wonderful positions. There's been divorces, there's been business failure, there's been spending, there's been poor investing, all of the things you traditionally see. But again, I think this view of the uncaring boomer who doesn't want policy change may be true in some cases, but in many, I think they're thinking, wow, we've left this younger generation in a tough spot. How do we fix it? As you guys have discussed, you five amigos have talked about many, many times, is fixing the housing affordability issue is not an easy thing to do. Otherwise, we would probably reach out and do it.
Okay, but wait a second. I got to jump in there. But importing 4 million people in the span of 6 years is insane.
Insane. And you know what's interesting is I don't meet anybody who argues with that, funnily enough. Whether they lean left, whether they lean right, nobody comes back and says the amount made any sense. I mean, I'm very pro-immigration. I think most people are. Depending on what AI and robotics do going forward, we may need a lot more people. But to do it in that uncontrolled fashion, that quantity over that short period of time, oh my gosh, of course you're going to overwhelm the housing system, the hospital system, in some cases, the school system. That's common sense. Like, I don't mean to be rude, but that's grade 2 arithmetic. And how we ended up doing that as a policy is a little wacky. And again, I don't know anybody who looks back at that and goes, good move. That just didn't make very much sense. And it's put us in a bit of a pickle, obviously. The other thing that frustrates me that Ben Rabideau has brought up on more than one occasion is it's turned a lot of Canadians against immigration because they're so frustrated with the fallout from too much immigration. They've now turned against immigration, period. That's not good. I mean, immigrants are a big part of what we have to do going forward. They've been a huge part of our past successes too. We want immigration, but we want it in a controlled, well thought through process. Canada kind of had it right before, for heaven's sakes. You know, our point system was envied by a lot of other countries in the world. The way we managed it made a lot of sense. So what happened there, I don't know. But I don't know many people who would argue with you, Rich. They'd all be on your side when you say that in my life.
Dave, I have a question for you. Do you get a lot of I guess like one of my concerns, and it's been a concern for a long time, really, almost since I got into the business, is do you see a lot of like parents passing down the advice to their kids that like home ownership is the be all end all, get into real estate no matter what? You know, look at me, you know, my house went from $300,000 to $2.5 million. You can do it too. Like, obviously, as Rich pointed out earlier, like a lot of the reason for that was just, you know, the bond trade. Right. Yeah. And so, you know, 30 plus years of falling interest rates. Is that one of the biggest things that you see, is that parents are passing on the exact same sort of strategy or playbook that they personally used?
Yeah, it's so well said. I would go beyond parents. It's almost part of the Canadian culture, the Canadian mindset, to think that you must own a home. And I had to battle that in writing the Wealthy Barber redo, because I think for some people, rent makes a lot more sense, to be perfectly honest. It's certainly not throwing your money away. And so how do you strike the balances? How do you do that analysis? One of the most interesting things in the last 5 years with home ownership is that it's not just the cost of homes, it's all the associated costs have run hot too. Property tax in so many areas, rising by 6, 7, 8% a year. Home insurance. Have you guys tried to do minor repairs to your home or a major renovation? Those have escalated in cost dramatically since, say, 2017, 2018. It is expensive owning a home, for heaven's sakes. I mean, my mother's passed on. Otherwise, I'd still live with her. I'd still be there right now, but no, she's gone. No, it is very tough on that front. So I think for some people, rent may be a more sensible way to go, but they're fighting cultural norms. They're fighting parents who do indeed say exactly what you said, Steve. So all of that's very interesting. And it's something I had to combat a lot when I wrote the book.
So Dave, so far we've heard you say population growth wasn't that awesome for Canada. Home ownership may not be that awesome. So let's mark it down January 15th when Dave Chilton gets canceled from the Loonie Hour.
Well, remember, I'm very pro-immigration, so that's let's be careful on that. But I do think the quantity we went to, obviously, again, you can't make sense. But going back to home ownership, I think for lots of people, it's a good move, but it's expensive. It makes it more difficult to save. You know, Ben Felix has done some great research on what would have happened had you rented and then invested the difference in total cost, the accurate difference in total cost. And in his mind, you'd end up being about even. But again, out of fairness, he does point out that most people wouldn't have invested the difference. They would have spent it in many instances, or they wouldn't have invested it well. That difference, by the way, has now expanded because of the cost we just spoke about. So if you do invest the difference relatively well, then oftentimes you may be able to end up ahead. But there's no easy answer to any of this. When costs are running this hot, again, it's basic arithmetic. It makes it very tough.
Yeah, so let's yeah. So, it's one thing that's interesting. I talk a lot about how the real estate experience in Canada, as Steve, as you pointed out, and you're pointing out as well, Dave, it really benefit from, population growing, of course, not the excessive population growth, but just a consistent growing of it, but also interest rates going lower. I call it the lost decade as well. But one of the key costs that's going to continue to climb for homeowners is going to be property taxes. Yep. I just really struggle with how cities, municipalities are really going to keep their budgets close without hiking taxes. They had to raise taxes, whether they increase assessment values and stuff like that. I cannot see that change in the direction that's going to help people. But let's move. I have another question for you. All the conversations you're having, we're sort of focused on what the challenges are with people in Canada. What are you hearing that people are more excited about with their financial planning or the outlook? It's, this is difficult here, but wow, this is a great opportunity coming up.
Well, a lot of the younger people now have kind of figured out that they better watch their fees. And so you're seeing more of the all-in-one low-cost ETFs being the portfolio foundation. And I think for a lot of them, that should lead to better returns over an extended time frame. So that's a good thing. A lot of them want to become quite well-informed. And so you're seeing them doing more reading, et cetera. But there's almost too much information out there. As I said earlier, you don't know how to distinguish between who's competent, who has the proper background, et cetera, and who's just on YouTube or on TikTok spouting out advice. All of that is very difficult to tell the difference. So all of it's quite tricky. But in general, I don't see among the younger people as much hope as I did 10, 15, and 20 years ago. I think these costs have worn a lot of them down. Plus, I mentioned a few moments ago, people are very fearful of AI and what kind of disruption it could bring to the job market in certain areas. And I think for good reason. Who knows where that's heading in the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, on the AI front, I actually find that really interesting that you're saying that, because I know you have a lot of conversations with people across the country. And that was kind of like one of my sort of theories and some of the conversation I've heard over the last 12 months, right? I think like when I look at home sales in Vancouver, 25-year lows, Toronto, 25-year lows as well. People always say, well, the tariff stuff. And I think that was a huge part, right? I mean, people were scared about sort of that and, the outlook there. But I actually think a lot of it as well has been concerns about job security moving forward. Like pretty hard to commit to, $1 million home purchase if you're worried about, AI replacing your job. So I'm really fascinated to hear that you've had those conversations as well, because I actually think that's been a huge sort of demand killer on the housing front.
Yeah, I definitely think it's played a role. And I think, as you know, a down market feeds off itself. You're now seeing more and more buyers say, hey, let's be patient here because we've got prices heading down for the first time in a long, long time. So that's playing a role. But also there's a big part of the market is, again, that's stuck. You had those buyers in 2020, 2021, early 2022, who now oftentimes have negative equity. They can't go anywhere. They are the typical move-up buyer has been taken out because they have negative equity and don't have a down payment for the next move up, and they're stuck there. And when you get one segment of the real estate market stuck, the ripple effect is significant. And so there's a lot of those contributing factors that have led to this. And when you look at it, I would think there's a fairly good chance we see even lower prices in the spring. A lot of people are hoping for a revival because they're thinking, the spring market tends to be strong and all those types of things. But I'm not sure. There's so many moving parts, again, with the negotiation with the states, et cetera. But I think this market may be staying soft for a little while.
I think you just made Steve turn into the squirmer then. I can see him moving a little bit.
Dave and I share a similar view, though. I mean, I think everybody's, what I've heard over the last couple of years, everybody's just been waiting on the Bank of Canada to come save the day. Oh, they're going to lower rates. And as soon as they lower rates, people are going to come back into the market. And obviously that just hasn't been the case.
So speaking of AI and home ownership, have you guys seen the new Titanic AI version? What happened if Rose and Jack survived? Did you guys see that?
No.
I did, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, if you've seen it, you've seen it. But they do survive. Jack survived the Titanic. They stay together, and they get married, and they do buy a home, and it is not an attractive looking home. They work their fingers to the bone, and they completely fell out of love. So maybe AI is good. It can give you a glimpse of what the future may not be that.
I thought you were leading to something uplifting and positive there.
Well, I'll give you uplifting and positive. I have a totally different view on AI. I think everyone is always apprehensive about new technologies. I think it was true in the 1800s when steam engines became a thing and there was a Luddite revolt in England. I think it was true in the 1980s with computers, and I think it'll be true again here. I think AI is ultimately going to make people much, much more productive, especially at a time when there's a falling birth rate, which means there's less human beings around. But anyway, that's like on the positive thing. I was just wondering if you, a little bit just off piece a little bit, but one of the things the Americans do a little bit better than we do is move for jobs, for houses.
What a cultural difference, eh?
And I was just wondering if, not in your book necessarily, but if you've ever thought about this idea that to be much more mobile. I think Canadians are often quite siloed. They refuse to move from province to city, whatever, for a better opportunity. And I know it's a bit sort of off piece, but I was just curious if you had thought about that, or if.
No, that's a great question. In fact, I did talk about it in the Wealthy Barber redo and said that you have to pull certain levers here to get yourself into the housing market, and openness to moving is one. And we actually had an example with one of the characters wanting to move closer to his cousins, but to a more expensive area. And the barber saying, wait a second here. And you're right about the American culture. What a difference. I mean, when you think of your American friends, almost none of them live in the city they grew up in.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Like the percentage of them who have moved is absolutely wild. So there is a bit of a difference, and people do have to be more open-minded to that. But realistically, you also have to go where the jobs are. And remember, in many cases, you've got childcare challenges that are better solved when you're near grandparents, et cetera. So all of this is trickier than we make it sound. And it's tough to figure out. Like childcare expenses are a major problem for a lot of young couples. So no, but it is a great point. Going back to your AI argument, though, it's going to be interesting to watch it play out, because I would argue the difference between AI and a steam engine is AI can improve itself. And so as it gets sharper and sharper, it gets sharper and sharper. And we're going to get more and more things coming in from it, I think, that we can't even imagine. I hope you're right, though, and it becomes just an incredible productivity tool that leads us to all kinds of new opportunities, and therefore it doesn't smash employment. It's really hard to say. I hope I stay alive long enough, frankly, because I'm old now, to see all this play out.
I don't think, like, don't get me wrong. I think there'll be intense collateral damage, but I also think it'll shift the labor power from white collar to blue collar. I think that's why you're seeing sort of a resurgence in people getting the trades. Like we were talking about what was it? I think it was a guy who works in an elevator, fixing elevators. He's a fan of Loonie Hour. He's doing super well, and it's, I don't think the AI is coming for his job. And so I think it takes a change in our perspective. I'm very cautious of the words like "this time is different." And so that's why I sort of have my backup when people say,
you and I think a lot alike. I mean, I've watched you on the show obviously many times, and I'm like you. This time is different is a scary expression, but I actually think this time is different. And so it's going to be interesting to watch it play out. By the way, every time I watch you guys, I swear I think you're in the same house. You're just in different rooms. And I always think that. I think these guys are in the same place. They're probably in Winnipeg or they're in Flin Flon or somewhere, and they're in the same house. And then as soon as we're done, they just go to the kitchen and start eating a raspberry jam sandwich together. Am I right?
That would be fun. We should do that.
No, you're not right.
I prefer 4 berries, but anyway.
One thing we like to do, when we travel, we've never missed a week. We've recorded.
That's impressive.
Even like this year, what we were supposed to record on, Thursday was Christmas Day, I think.
Yeah, we did on Wednesday or Tuesday.
Yeah, we still do everything.
That must be hard with Steve's vacation schedule. I mean, he's away a lot. That's hard on you two guys.
Tell my wife.
And when we record for Steve, it's always early in the morning. So
Yeah.
That's why he's a little bit less pleasant than the rest of us.
Than the rest of you guys.
One of our good friends, their adult son, he follows the podcast every now and then, and he still talks about the swim up bar episode. So we were, Mrs. Icecap and I, we were down one of the islands there a couple years ago when we did that one. But it's fun, Dave. We always get on, and of course we love Rich's locker room. location.
Oh, yeah.
That's another good
Absolutely.
Portugal. That was a good one.
Yeah.
Like, I can't believe that I'm now following Rich's hockey as close as I follow my hockey pool. My hockey pool means more to me than my family. Oh, I'm always on listening. How is he doing? Did he score?
I got promoted, Dave. I got promoted to the league above.
Dave,
Oh, wow. That's impressive.
Dave, we just found out these guys don't even drink beer after the game. What kind of team is that?
Goes home and works on his shot. I like that.
Yeah,
that's actually
right.
very, very dedicated. I don't even know much about your personal lives. Like, are you three guys married?
No.
I am.
You are?
No,
Yeah.
I've been unlucky in love, but hopefully that'll turn around soon.
Well, now, you know what? A lot of times it happens when you get promoted to the league up.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Good things tend to follow that.
There's
for
people
sure,
that specifically follow this show to track Rich's love life. So it's
that's good. That's
You
good.
know,
It can't get
we
any
did
worse,
a,
fellas. It can't get any worse.
So we did an event in Toronto a couple of years ago, and Mrs. Icecap arrived at the end of it. And so she walked in, and she was standing next to me. We're chatting a bit, and one guy comes sprinting across the room. "Are you Mrs. Icecap?" And Mrs. Icecap is not used to attention like that. And then the whole room just flooded over to her.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So, but my son, he's at Waterloo, so I know that's your.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I live about 5 minutes, 6 minutes from the university.
Well, next time I'm in town, I'm up there not quite a bit, a few times a year.
Look me up for sure.
Connect.
Dave,
I'll tell you something interesting.
You got some of those big multiplexes going on in your neighborhood too.
Oh boy, do we ever. I mean, and remember, this is an area, by the way, that's actually still doing quite well. And the real estate has not dipped in parts of Waterloo too much. Some of the tech companies are flourishing. Obviously, some are scuffling as always. But I'll tell you something interesting as we talk about challenges in Canada. We get pitched a lot by young entrepreneurs in the tech sector. And lately, a lot of them are saying their biggest problem is attracting talent. It's getting the people to stay in Canada because, of course, they're getting outsized offers from the US companies, but also the price of real estate in Canada. So that's another place that's playing a role. They're saying we can go down to Texas, and the real estate, in some cases, even after converting the currency, is so much lower, 40% lower, 50% lower, that's swaying people a little bit. Although I laugh, we talk about all these things, you read about them in all in articles, and then when you actually talk to the young kids, and they'll say, yeah, I'm not sure I want to stay in Canada. You know what it is? It's the weather. We can't do much about that. It's got nothing to do with policy, nothing got to do with real estate prices. They're going, it's too cold up here. So, but the talent attraction part of all this is so important, as you three know. And that is becoming more challenging with the cost of living in Canada becoming more and more extreme.
Dave, I think you obviously got tons of insights there. I'm just curious as we get closer to wrapping this up, but do you ever have policymakers reaching out to you and trying to get your advice or opinions? And obviously you're a well-connected guy and I'm just curious if you've had any sort of conversations there.
I have. And you know what's interesting? I know this sounds against what a lot of people say, but I've found over the years that most of the politicians are very caring people. I really do. I find almost all of the ones I've dealt with personally from all parties really want to be positive difference makers. They take all of this heat. Can you imagine being a politician nowadays with social media and all of the anger out there? Oh my gosh. I find a lot of them are really caring and really want to help. They may disagree on how exactly to do that. But for the most part, I found them to be very, very nice people. And everybody's trying to figure out how do we juggle all of these different objectives, often, by the way, conflicting objectives. And how do we handle all this? I mean, I don't have any easy answers either. It is tricky times for sure. And a lot of change right now, and things are happening so quickly. I mean, the world is on edge. You look what's happening out there in all parts of the world. It's intimidating right now. It really is.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Dave, I want to thank you again for coming on the show. Again, everyone check out the Wealthy Barber, the updated version. Keith still has the 1987 version, but
I'm going to get Rich one. And I also want to say thank you. I love you guys. I love watching the show. And to get the 8 of us together like this has been absolutely a tremendous experience. I really have enjoyed it.
Awesome, Dave. Thanks so much. We'll look forward to having you on again here soon.
Thanks again.
Great conversation with Dave there. Hope everyone enjoyed it. I mean, I certainly did. I think he's just like an awesome human being, to be honest.
Leave it to Rich, though. Hey, thanks for having you on today. I have not read your book, but I have 18 questions.
Well, I wasn't going to lie to him, was I?
By the way, send me a free book.
Yeah, you're right. In hindsight, that perhaps wasn't the best way to handle that. Oops.
But guys, Dave is an icon, from my generation, of course. And Wow, like the energy coming from him on the I could say the call, but on the conversation we just had. So I hope everyone enjoyed it, and we'll definitely have Dave back again soon.
Yeah, so sort of switching gears here. There's lots going on in the world as we kind of framed up at the beginning of the conversation there. One of the ones that we were kind of semi laughing about in our group chat there was the Jerome Powell. So if anyone's been following that story, obviously Donald Trump, President of the United States, has been really trying to have a stronger sway on interest rates, right? As the central bank is supposed to be independent. Trump is telling him to cut rates. Jerome Powell. Remember that interview, Rich, where it was like Trump and Powell at the Federal Reserve building that was under construction. And they were like arguing on camera about how over budget he was.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, it was like almost
embarrassing.
AI.
Yeah. That's right.
Dude, there's no way this is real. It was actually kind of funny, but anyways, so I think Powell was impeached.
No. So I mean, go ahead. Sorry.
Give me the back. You give the background story.
I mean, I don't know exactly the fully thing. I would be lying if I told you. I think I've focused on sort of what it means rather than the actual details. But So maybe Keith, if you know exactly, I don't want to screw it up. Keith's not paying attention. Okay, I mean,
no, I was. I thought you were going to go on and on.
No, because I don't want to. I want to talk about what it means, but I know you have the exact details, and I don't want to cock it up.
Oh, probably. I mean, so the gist of it is, my understanding, they're building a new building, for the Federal Reserve. And, the Trump White House are saying, hey, you're gone way over budget. You're spending money where you shouldn't be, making decisions where you shouldn't be, and stuff like that. So they're charging him, not with civil charges or, hey, you screwed up, you're going to be dismissed from your job. It was criminal charges. So that's like bars, that you go behind. And so, that's what happened. It was an incredibly awkward, never before seen move, like in our world. It's incredibly outrageous because there is supposed to be this sense of objectivity, independence with every major central bank and the underlying government on what to do. And this line has clearly been passed. That's where it is. My suggestion is, again, this is just us and we're insensitive with things like this. We're not judging whether it should or shouldn't be happening. The point is, it is happening. So whoever becomes the new chair of the Fed, and by the way, the criminal charge, that's going to be dropped. Like, that's not going to continue. That's just the way that the Trump administration, how they do things. But the next Fed that's coming in control or power, they're no longer going to be independent of fiscal policy. I mean, they're going to be told, we want lower rates to help with the lower interest expense and so forth. And I would argue it's going to happen everywhere. I know the Bank of Canada people are saying, oh, no, never. We're very independent and objective. I mean, there's so much debt being issued. The impact now of interest expense on everyone's budget is just becoming increasingly more, material for everyone. So again, the old way of doing things with monetary policy, I think it's all blurring together, and it is going to create a big change coming up. But Steve, you're right. It was one of these outrageous moments. Again, it was so outrageous. Powell actually had a press conference. About it.
It looked like he was a hostage
night
taking.
Or something. Yeah,
it looked like it was a hostage taking when they hold up the newspaper
it looked like he hadn't slept in like 2 days. So basically, he came out. He does this press conference, and he's like, "I'm being criminally charged, and this is basically impacting my ability to sort of be effectively independent and set monetary policy as I see fit." And he basically said, like, effectively what he was saying in simple terms is, listen, I'm basically being blackmailed here because I'm not playing ball and, lowering interest rates as much as the president wants. And so this has a real impact on our credibility moving forward. And so it was interesting because, Rich, I think after that, I think a couple of days later, all of these central banks around the world came out and said, we stand with Jerome Powell, the Fed. I think it was signed by the Bank of England, the Bank of Canada, I think the ECB, basically saying, like, this cannot be allowed to go on. We need to have our independence.
which is a bit rich, by the way. Which is a bit rich, by the way, because I'm sorry, like a couple of things we need to point out. Number one, Jerome Powell cut interest rates 50 basis points right before the general election in in October of 2024. That almost never happens, right? The Fed is explicit in their love for independence. Ergo, when it comes to major elections, especially as one as contentious as Trump versus Biden, the fact that they cut interest rates by 50 basis points when there was no crisis, no recession, and inflation was 3%. I get it. Powell is now like clinging on to this independence thing, as he should. I get it. But just it's important to remember that little wrinkle. And then the other thing is Canada's central bank has demonstrated for over and over that it's not independent. I'm sorry, Mr. Macklem. With buying up 87% of every single bond issued from June 2020 or whatever it was to and end of 2022. It was insane. That was obviously not independent. Anyway, sorry, Keith. I had to just throw that in there.
No, I think that's Rich. I think that's a good point. I think it's I think the takeaway here is like, we're kind of reaching this tipping point that the reality is, as Keith said, like there's so much debt being issued that these central banks claim to be independent. But I think it's becoming more and more increasingly obvious that we've kind of crossed that Rubicon. I think, Keith, one of the ones that always stood out to me was when Janet Yellen was head of the Fed. And then as soon as she left the Fed, she became Treasury Secretary.
Yeah.
You're like...
Yeah, exactly. Which is a political posting, by the way. Anyways, one more thing, just quickly. I think it's also not the first time that this has happened in American history. So Richard Nixon, who was president, from 1972 onwards, he appointed basically, I don't want to say a patsy, but Arthur Burns, basically, who lowered interest rates basically because Nixon wanted him to. And so, and that ended up causing all kinds of problems down the road. And
was it Burns? Burns was the head of Volcker, right?
Yeah. So that's right.
So Volcker had to come in and clean up the mess.
Yes, exactly right. Exactly right.
Well, we might be going down that path.
Well,
I think and again, for everyone, it's just an extraordinary event.
Yeah,
it really is in the economic monetary world. However, don't be judgmental. Instead, say, okay, this is happening. And by the way, with all the other central banks writing a letter, that has zero effect. Like that does not matter, not one bit. But yeah, so it is happening. So again, I think it is this marriage or this blur of the big blob that is out there, that there is simply too much debt that's been issued. And it's not just the Americans, it's the same with the Canadians and the Brits and everyone else. And guess what? The amount of debt that's going to be issued again coming up, it's rising again. So it's like there's no way out of this mess where we're going with it.
Keith, just to kind of add to this, I think we are kind of in this new, I think it's been kind of happening since the pandemic, but really this like state controlled capital allocation, which is to say, like, you've seen Trump coming out in the last couple of weeks with, saying they're going to spend $200 billion to basically buy down mortgage rates. We're setting credit card interest rates to 10%,
which is dumb.
All of this, there's just a lot going on, I think. And I think you're seeing this fiscal dominance that is really playing out. And it's not just the United States. Other countries are going down the same path, but
remember, Steve, when the ECB thought it should be involved in climate change? I mean, if that's not the most political, how do you remember they want to restrict capital to companies who are investing in fossil fuels? Funny how that's worked out, but you know what I mean?
We're going to come up to that one.
Yeah, I know. But what I'm saying to you is, I think what Trump did is completely outrageous. Just to be very clear, but let's just remember the other details of what's been going on over the last few years.
By the way, it's funny how Steve and I were having this conversation. We do have a very our normal face. Rich, I've never seen you grinning so much in a long time.
It's it's kind of crazy that Powell had to basically go and read his speech and post it on Twitter. It looked like a hostage taking, I don't know. That's how I felt.
Yeah. So we're going to get into this as the year continues to move along. But, we talk about this quite a bit. The likely scenario coming up for central banks, and we use the Bank of Canada as the example, we're going to be a period with sluggish growth. Employment is either deteriorating or not improving. And inflation is just going higher and higher and higher. Then we'll see how independent the Bank of Canada is, sticking to what their job mandate is and so forth. And they have a decision to make at that time. Do we raise rates to try to bring inflation back? And by the way, inflation at the time is being driven by the commodity market, and raising or lowering interest rates will not affect that, not one bit. So we'll see what they do at that situation. So, I would like to say last year was a year with no risk being expressed. People are just unaware that things can go in the opposite direction. This year is getting off to a bang already. There's certainly
really no inflation in the rental market in Canada. With the latest data from rentals.ca, rents in Canada have now fallen for 15 consecutive months. And in Vancouver and Toronto, apartment rents have fallen to their lowest levels since early 2022, recording drops of 13% in Vancouver and 12% in Toronto from basically those levels.
So what's interesting with that is one half of the country saying, hey, this is awesome, this is great. And then the other half, or who's really on the ball, is saying, it's actually not that great, because there's an asset holder out there whose asset is going lower and lower, and their debt level is staying where it is. So it's, again, we continue to go into this uncomfortable moment.
Speaking of which, Keith, I don't know if you saw this, but there were two articles out this week, and it's sort of a theme that we've introduced a little bit in the Loonie Hour over the last little while. But it's these private real estate funds, particularly the ones that have lent to real estate developers for example, on the construction side. So Bloomberg wrote an article saying, Canadians are increasingly frustrated about their lack of liquidity. Basically, these funds, several of these funds gating clients from getting their capital out of these funds. And the one in particular that we flagged has actually been one of the largest ones, called Romspin. Basically, it's been 3 years now since they gated their clients' funds, and it's one of the largest private real estate funds out there. But the reason for that is they're saying, hey, look, it's looking increasingly unlikely that after 3 years that these people are ever going to get their money out of this real estate fund. Investors in Romspin $2.7 billion mortgage investment fund have been trapped since November of 2022, when Romspin froze investor redemptions. And so basically a part of this is because a lot of that fund, 5 of their projects that they've lent to are actually in receivership. They've either gone bankrupt or they've done a complete credit restructuring. 3 of the developments, I believe, are in Canada. I think 2 in the United States. So I don't know. It's just kind of a core theme.
We covered this quite a bit at the investor series event we did in Toronto there a couple of months ago. For every market, we always look at which way is the trend going. Is it continuing in that direction? Be positive or negative. But this trend for private credit funds, it's not getting better. It continues to go in the wrong direction. Which again, it signals that it's one thing to have a loss in the stock market, because it's, there's always residual value and it comes back. But when you get a loss this is the bond market, if you think about it, it's a permanent loss of your capital. There's no bounce back to it. Maybe it takes years and years to go through it and the courts and stuff like that. But it is a significant event, Steve, to follow. And Rich, didn't you see another similar headline on Bloomberg the other day about Canada with private funds?
Oh yeah, I can't remember the name of it. We probably shouldn't say it anyway. But it was big money. And they were stopping redemptions, I believe, is what it is.
Well, the gist of the story, though, was saying, hey, Canada suddenly has a problem with private private funds.
Yeah.
And I think they're saying like Canadians are furious. I think that was the word.
That's it.
Yeah, I think that was the word it used. And of course, we've known about this now for a while. So it's interesting to see Bloomberg, they discovered brand new story no one was aware of.
It's kind of just
Loonie Hour was aware of it first.
But I just want to say that there's never, what we love to say, or I like to say anyway, is that there's just never just one cockroach. When that one sneaks out from underneath your fridge, you stamp on it, there's going to be loads more. And that's what I think we're just seeing.
Okay, so here's the sort of last little details on Robinson before we move on. So apparently it's a $2.7 billion mortgage investment fund. Again, they typically lend to developers on the construction side, which ultimately, to be honest, is the most risky type of loan out there in the real estate space. Where construction is highly risky, so it's not no surprise that those loans are obviously going sour. So you have there's three projects in Canada. They are the LE condominium project in Toronto, the redevelopment of Woodbine Mall in Toronto, and the Atmosphere mixed-use project in Richmond, BC. And then there's two in the United States. But all five of these developments are either in receivership or have restructured under creditor protection, according to a Globe and Mail analysis. And each of the five projects has borrowed more than $100 million from Romsman.
Yikes.
So, anyways. But shifting gears, Rich, there was something that you flagged earlier which really comes to like sort of our geopolitical conversation that we've been really focused on, is the Chinese trade data.
Oh, cool.
So China, and I'll let you get into it.
I was getting excited.
Rich was waiting for another topic. I was waiting to introduce that one next.
It's okay. We'll talk about the Chinese.
Don't worry. We'll
data.
shift gears.
We'll talk
China,
about the Chinese.
China just posted a record-breaking $1.2 trillion global trade surplus.
Yeah.
The EU is up 18%, and Germany's numbers are up a staggering 108% surge in the surplus, meaning it now accounts for nearly a third of China's entire EU surplus. I don't know if you want to walk our listeners through that.
Yeah, I think, it's a couple of things going on. One, it's, obviously the tariffs that the U.S. has imposed onto China has sort of rerouted some of this trade in two ways. One, literally rerouting it. People are always going to try to find a way around tariffs and sanctions. If you ever want an interesting little exercise for people, is to go look at the trade between Germany and Kazakhstan before and after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Germany used to never trade with Kazakhstan, and now they do. And obviously that trade means from Kazakhstan to Russia. It's a similar thing of what's going on right here, right now, which is a lot of this trade, instead of going from China to the United States, it's going via Europe. I don't know how much of it, but it's certainly a non-trivial component. The other part is that China is just saying, listen, we're going to attack this trade market just like they did. That's a negative connotation. They're just going to shift their focus to a different market, which is fair enough for them. And it's also a function of the fact that Germany, as an example, used to sell, let's say millions and millions of Mercedes-Benz to China, and is no longer doing that. So for years and years and years, Germany was one of the largest car makers in the world. China's now pipped that spot. China has, for better or for worse, absorbed a lot of that corporate knowledge through some probably fair practices and probably some unfair practices. And now Germany has a negative trade has a trade deficit with China. It's just a confluence. And then, of course, there's the whole, China doesn't care about climate change at all and is able to compete on price for not numerous things. It's a bunch of things all sort of happening at the exact same time.
I'll just give you my view what's happening with it. When that headline first comes out, it's the initial reaction for a lot of people is, wow, this is amazing for China. What is such an incredible data point for them to have. It's not, because for their net trade to be increasing like that, it means that their domestic economy remains incredibly weak.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Remember, they should be importing stuff as well. And, with exports increasing so much and imports not rising, again, it continues to show that the domestic economy in China, it's really in trouble. It's weakening, because usually a thriving economy, you want to have a balanced trade. budget. That's what you're looking at. But China right now, the exports are completely subsidizing the domestic economy. So think about, sand is coming in and, from the export market, and it hits the domestic economy and it goes down through a hole. It's not supporting it. So this is, again, it's not this awesome number. And then as Rich just showed us, of course, okay, what's happening on the outside? Who's all the trade taking place with? And that signals, a negative, situation in Europe, especially. So it is something to keep watching. But just to let you know, the Chinese domestic market is still struggling. This is not a great number to see.
So,
Yep.
Germany is just getting.
You're switching gears now, right? Just to move into.
Well, they're getting walked all over in general. If you look at the Chinese trade data, but
Yep.
Rich, you also had the German chancellor out this week.
Yes. I'm sorry. I mean, I shouldn't enjoy this as much as I am, but what is it? There's a great word called Schadenfreude, pleasure in other people's pain. I mean, so the German chancellor, whose name is Merz, Friedrich Merz, said that Germany's decision to phase out nuclear power, completed with the shutdown of the last nuclear reactor, was, quote, a grave strategic mistake. And he argues that abandoning nuclear energy has hurt Germany's energy sector and economic competitiveness. And to him, I say, duh, and thank you. Honestly, I think it took a lot of courage for him to come out and say that. What's really interesting, though, two things. One, they're not going to be able to restart the reactors. So it's really like So it says reactivating Germany's old nuclear plants are unlikely. What this means is they're going to have to build a bunch of natural gas power plants basically to make up for it. They're quicker, faster to build, clearly more simple, obviously. They're less clean, naturally, because it's burning gas. And it'll increase Germany's dependence on foreign natural gas, likely to be imported from America. And the final thing is that, but the key thing for the world, I would say, is that Germany is going to drop, or has dropped, its longstanding opposition to nuclear power at the EU level. So France gets 75% of its energy from nuclear power, thanks to the Suez Crisis and Charles de Gaulle in the 1950s and 60s and 70s. And they are obviously a major player in the nuclear power world. So is Canada, by the way. It's something we don't talk enough about, And so for years and years, France has argued that there should be more nuclear power in Europe. And the German Green Party has successfully leveraged the fear of Chernobyl and other kinds of problems to block it. And it's been an absolute unmitigated disaster. And
just share why it's a disaster.
It's a disaster because it basically put so in Germany used to have 23 gigawatts, that went to zero. And instead of being independent effectively, they started importing natural gas from Russia through Nord Stream and other pipelines. And so when Russia invaded Ukraine, they had to stop that. Energy prices soared. They've obviously come down off those highs, but are still very, very expensive. And Germany's whole economy is basically turning cheap energy, clever engineering, and selling products to people all over the world who want them. This includes BASF, Krupp, Mercedes-Benz, and any other German chemical or manufacturing company that you could possibly think of. And those margins obviously aren't that big. Even if you're clever, you still have to have cheap input prices, e.g. cheap energy. And so when you have those higher energy prices, for a little while you can deal with it. But if you cannot sustain those massively expensive energy prices when you have such little margins, and effectively it's destroyed the industrial production of energy-intensive companies and sectors. And you can see it's now 20% in real terms off of the peak of 2019. And so you're seeing companies move, literally entire factories just pick up and move down the road to places like Hungary. Obviously, China.
Mercedes just moved. I think Mercedes just shifted 20 or 30.
Anyways, it's been a complete and utter disaster. The upshot to this is that employment in Germany has been flat for 4 years. Obviously, industrial production is down. 10 to 20%, depending on whether you're energy intensive or not. And it's been a complete and utter disaster. And the worst part is that they're burning more coal, which is just insane. Again, the whole thing was crazy from the beginning. The reason I have so much fun with it is because when it first started happening on the Loonie Hour, I was like, this is going to end very, very badly. And, and I was right, I guess. That's why I enjoyed it so much. Sorry, forgive me for being so blunt. But it is
just
wild.
Imagine, so he wasn't, so the chancellor, he wouldn't have just had a press conference and just flippantly said, by the way, this is happening. They would have had a lot of discussion and meetings about actually announcing this. Yeah. So imagine in the climate world, as an example, this thing is reverberating around.
Yeah. It's a huge deal.
It is. It has to be. Absolutely.
Germany, just one last thing. Germany's 25% and 27 whatever percent of Euro area GDP. So if Germany cannot sustain growth, then Europe is done. It's one thing for Greece to have some kind of debt crisis. It's 2% of GDP, or Italy, which is like 18, still very big, but for the biggest, most important economy in Europe to not have any employment growth in 4 years, obviously So anyway, there you go. Nuclear
it's kind
power.
of funny. Some of my European friends that I go back and forth with about this stuff, they're telling me, sharing with me, that there's actually conversations taking place for Southern Europe to jettison Germany out of the eurozone, or for them.
Oh my God!
Yeah, I'm serious. Like these are the thoughtful conversations that are taking place. And remember, just 15 years ago, the Germans basically flipped the bird to the Greeks. And it's ironic how it's coming back now full circle. So do you think any of the other members, Steve, I think any of the other members of the Eurozone now want to step in and help Germany? No way. No. They have long memories.
But that's a joke. So the industrial production numbers from Spain, Greece especially, have done super well. Portugal's okay. Like I know Poland's not in the Euro area, but Poland's smashing it. It's very funny. I shouldn't enjoy this as much as I am, but yeah, it's just, there you go.
Well, it says,
okay, cool. What else are you seeing, Steve, on our list?
Industry report showing German manufacturing electricity costs 2 to 3 times higher than Hungary's.
Yeah, it's sad. It's dumb. It was extraordinarily obvious to see. And like I said, I think it takes a lot of courage for that guy to come out and say it and come and turn around. Yeah.
As we get closer to wrapping this up, I'm sure people are going to get frustrated if we don't mention it, but Iran, obviously, going through the protests there and the internet has gone dark, and it's, I've got some friends and stuff that, still have family over there, and sort of hearing some sort of firsthand stories from them, and obviously the concern about not being able to reach family members, and it's
so what kind of stories are you hearing, Steve? Like
just that, basically, we got family there, and there's no internet, there's no phone lines don't work, so you don't know the health and status of your family, basically. It's
that's not pleasant.
It's really sad
at all.
And go ahead.
I mean, just from our perspective, we were chatting a couple of days ago. The currency is down about 90% over a week, so 90. It's basically gone to zero. As soon as that happens, you're not able to get foreign investment anymore of any kind. So you're not going to get foreign exchange coming in, especially US dollars. And I'm also sort of hearing and seeing that the government as well in power, they started moving their assets out of the country. Mm-hmm. As soon as your currency declines that much so quickly, it's over. Something is going to change here very dramatically. And so this story, I know it's a bit calmer today from where it could have been last night. Because the Americans were talking about, actually getting involved with a kinetic forces last night, and it didn't happen. But there's going to be enormous change in Iran. That's going to have an enormous impact on a lot of things, but especially the oil world. I mean, that's what we're seeing here. Did you have any thoughts, Rich?
No, I think the currency thing is something we just don't. That's different this time. Back to what I said to Dave. But in previous years, you've had uprisings. In 2011, there was the Arab Spring, and then there was a little bit of grumblings on the ground in Tehran. There's been obviously other times where people have been pissed and been on the street and have been put down, to use a horrible euphemism, as a result. I think where it's different this time is because the currency has just absolutely collapsed, and that changes the math for a lot of people. A lot of people who otherwise wouldn't be on the street now see their entire wealth and assets vaporized, and that's different.
So the clean exchange here, if you follow this, is it the Shah who's in London? Is that who?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, no, excuse me. No, he's the prince, but anyway, whatever, doesn't matter.
Okay, well, whatever. So the dude in London, who a lot of people believe should be the leader in Iran, he's ready to go back.
Yeah.
Yeah, his bags are packed, ready to go. If the current government, if they do leave and it's a clean exchange, he is absolutely going to be supported by the Americans.
Yep.
He's going to fly in and he's going to have a boatload of cash with him, US dollars. So that's one easy way to fix it. However, the Russians and the Chinese have a lot of play here with Iran. So it looks on paper, maybe there's a clean change here, but again, geopolitically, there's a lot taking place at the same time around the world. So let's I'm sure by next week, something else would have happened in Iran.
Yeah. Well, again, this is not a theme or a story that's going away anytime soon. So obviously we're working through our networks here and trying to get some good geopolitical strategists that can kind of come on and continue to sort of explain to us, all the puzzle pieces that are coming together over the next couple months. So stay tuned for that. But I think it's a good place to wrap it up, guys. We appreciate the support. Obviously, hopefully everybody enjoyed the conversation there with Dave. A little bit different, but I thought it was an awesome conversation. So as always, guys, we appreciate the support, and we'll see you next week.